Thanks, Chair, and thanks to the witnesses that have come in. I represent County Limerick, and I'm elected to County Limerick. I've been involved in construction all my life. I've been a councillor for 6 years before I became a deputy of this House. What I do see from the planning process is there is very little equality when it comes to planning permission and developments within our towns, villages, in our areas. And to everyone in this country and needs in an all-Ireland approach should have a right to live in an area where they were reared or where they want to live. But what is stopping this, and what is stopping a lot of the applications and planning applications in this country, is infrastructure. You cannot have planning without infrastructure. And I've been highlighting this for a number of years of the lack of infrastructure, and I'll just use County Limerick as an example, which I know best. And we can look at examples of places at the moment where we have 100 houses that have planning permission. And because of lack of infrastructure, they now can't go ahead because of things are not in place. I've dealt with the planning authorities, with Limerick City and County Council, and with the planners that I've dealt with, I don't have an issue. They're very transparent, and yes, they want it to build. But when I look and I've done a survey of County Limerick for infrastructure, it showed up 10.7% of the towns in County Limerick have infrastructure left to have more development. When I done an analysis of Limerick County, it showed that the towns that were in question were within maximum 25 minutes from Limerick City. So when you left the 25-minute area from Limerick City, infrastructure has not been invested in, so planning is at a stop. And I'll just give an example of where I'm talking about. Adair is within 15 minutes of Limerick City and has capacity. Croom is held up at the moment with 100 units due to lack of infrastructure in a certain area, which I won't go into, but has planning but a lack of infrastructure within 12 to 15 minutes from Limerick City. Kilmallock has infrastructure in place 25 minutes from Limerick City. I then leave Kilmallock and I go to a hospital, I go to Kilfinnan, I go to Oola, maximum capacity, and commitments are saying that there will be no increase in capacity. They will upgrade the existing system to cater for the capacity that is there, but there is no increase in the future for any capacity. That's in East Limerick. I then go across to West Limerick and I go to Drumculliher, no capacity. You go to Newcastle West, 25 minutes from Limerick City, has capacity, and then I go outside Newcastle West to Foynes, onto Skeeton, which is 32 years, looking from the government for capacity for them to increase their area. I then go on to Abbeyfield, no capacity. So looking at the local development plans and looking at the infrastructure that has been put on by governments and successive governments, you have only looked for areas that have capacity and large towns. You haven't looked at the smaller towns and the villages to give people equality and choice to live in Limerick, which will also bring down emissions. If you have infrastructure, you have more industry. If you have more industry, you have employment locally, less people travelling. But everything seems to be centralised into areas that have capacity. And if that's the case, Limerick will only have a third of their county, of the towns that are there, with capacity, and the rest of Limerick then are going to be left with exorbitant costs of trying to get employment, get to work with no infrastructure. So this planning has to start with infrastructure, and infrastructure with equality around our counties. And this planning needs to look at it as a holistic view, not just cities and large towns that have capacity, but outside of that, so we can give people in other areas, in counties, their choice to live in a town and a village and seek employment within those areas and increase industry. So I'd like to ask all of the people, because I've listened to some of the deputies that are here today, and they're all coming from a city approach. Where is your county approach, and where is it from people like myself that have lived in a rural area? And I'm 8 minutes from a bypass, and I can be in Limerick City within 20 minutes, and I'm in a rural area. But if I look around me, there is no forward planning for increasing towns and villages because none of them have infrastructure. There's no plan for infrastructure. That means then we have no plan going forward for equality for everyone in Ireland. So I'd like to, if somebody can address that question.
There's about a minute left on that slot, Deputy Donoghue. If you'd wish to choose one, either construction planning,
I'll
city
go to Conor
council.
and see what he can do, because he was talking about an all-Ireland approach, and I didn't hear the county be mentioned in towns and villages with infrastructure. Thank you.
Okay, I'll try to. That's a fairly big one, if you don't mind me saying so. But yes, I mean you're right. I mean, insofar as possible, I think we should be able to accommodate communities and allow communities to grow and flourish. But I suppose there's no absolute right to that. I would say that our biggest responsibility, of course, is to sustainable development. So we have a responsibility there now to make sure that we're living sustainably and we're contributing to that big effort. One of the, I suppose, the key issues at the moment is the National Planning Framework, which does set out balanced regional development and does identify the important role, of course, of cities in developing and driving the development of the regions, and as a certain counterbalance to the city, and the importance of that in terms of viability of the regions, etc. And that's elaborated in the regional spatial strategies as well, where the regions, the assemblies, identify again a series of towns, larger towns and county towns, which have a key role there. And of course, as you know yourself, then it is up to the democratic county or city development plan really to look at then how that settlement strategy or how those core strategies are applied across the counties. And
thanks, Mr. Norton. I'm sorry, I have to. We're over 7 minutes there now.